We started this week with a review of Unit 1, where we explored properties of numbers. We talked about solving equations, dimensional analysis, and word problems. Unit 2, we're going to be focusing on sequences. So what are sequences? That's a pattern of elements, could be numbers, shapes, or sounds, where the pattern is named explicitly and future terms may be predicted. And so that's a nice segue into the kinds of sequences. We're going to be talking about arithmetic sequences. So what exactly is this? Arithmetic sequences are one with a string of numbers where we have growth or decay. That means the numbers are getting either smaller or larger or smaller, by addition or subtraction. And so this growth and decay between each term, we're going to call that the common difference. So the growth and decay is constant. That means that it doesn't change. And let's explore that further. Here we have a sequence with a pattern. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Clearly this sequence is growing by what? By plus 2 for each term. So the distance between each number is 2, and that's what we're going to be referring to as our common difference. We're going to be looking for that as we explore this concept further. Additionally, these sequences can be shrinking, so maybe it's 100 and then negative 100, negative 90, negative 80. Clearly, the common difference between each term is negative 10 because it's shrinking or decaying. So what do we do when we have a sequence where one of the terms is missing? We're going to have to find the distance from the first term to the last term, and to do that we're going to be subtracting the last term. In this case it's negative 18 by negative 30. So negative 18 minus negative 30 is going to give us 12. So that, of course, is the distance from negative 30 to negative 18. But we're not done yet. We've got to find out the common difference. So how much space is there from negative 30 to this middle term, and then the middle term to negative 18? What I know is that there's two spaces, right? I'm looking at this comma and this comma. So we're going to be dividing this distance by 2. So 12 divided by 2 is going to give us 6, positive 6. So I know that negative 30 plus 6 is what? Negative 24. Negative 24 is actually the missing term, and then we can sort of check to see if this is accurate. Negative 24 plus 6 is negative 18. So negative 24 is our answer. So here we have another arithmetic sequence, and we've got an unknown. We don't know what the value of this middle term is, but we're going to find this out by, like before, subtracting the last term, 50 minus 32, the first term, and that's going to tell us the distance, right? And we're going to be dividing this by 2 because we've got two spaces, and we're going to be jumping, of course, from the first term to the middle to the last. So let's figure this out. 50 minus 32 is going to give us 18, and we're not done yet. We've got to divide it by those two gaps. That's going to give us a common difference of 9. So we can write that like 9 equals D. And what we can then do is add 9 to this first term. So 32 plus 9 is going to give us what? 41. 41 plus 9 is going to give us 50. So we know that this is correct. This is our sequence. Pretty easy when we only have one term missing, but what about when we have 3 terms missing, as we do in this case? Well, like before, we're always going to be calculating the distance between these two terms on the end, starting with the one on the right. And I know that 10 minus negative 30 is going to give us positive 40, right? But then we've got to calculate the distance. So you need to add the gaps, or I like to simply add the commas. That tells us how many spaces there are. And I say 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to divide 40 by 4. And that's going to give us the common difference, which is simply 10. Great. So now what we need to do is we need to add 10 to the first term. Negative 30 plus 10 is going to give us negative 20. Negative 20 plus 10 is going to give us simply 10. Negative 10 plus 10 is 0. So we've just figured out this sequence. To find unknown values in an arithmetic sequence when there are fractions involved can be a little bit tricky, but if we follow the same steps, we should make out okay. So the first thing that we're going to do is start with this last term. We know that we're going to do 7/10 minus negative 4/5. And we also know that when we are adding or subtracting fractions, we need to make sure that the denominator is the same. Right? So how can we get the denominator to be equal? We're going to multiply both sides by 2. And when we do that, we know that negative 4 times 2 is going to give us what? It's going to give us negative 8. And 5 times 2 is going to give us 10. Great. So we've got 7 tenths minus negative 8 over tenths. And 7 minus negative 8 is going to give us what? Positive 15 over 10. Great. So we're not done yet. We just found the distance between that first and fourth term. But now what we need to do is figure out the common difference. So basically, how much space is there from the first to the second, second to third, and third to fourth. To do that, what we have been doing is dividing by the number of spaces. So in this case, it's 3. But when there's fractions involved, it's going to be a little bit easier to simply multiply by the reciprocal. So we got 15 tenths times, not 3, but 1 over 3. And we can actually simplify this before we go any further. So I know that 15 divided by 3 is going to give us 5, and 3 divided by 3 is going to give us 1. So the common difference is going to be 5 over 10. Great. So, beautiful. Now what I'm going to do, just because I want to make sure I don't really get confused, I'm actually going to change negative 4/5 to the conversion, which is negative 8 tenths. And what we're going to do now is simply add, when we're looking at this, we're simply going to add 4/5 to negative 8 tenths. And I know that negative 8 plus 5 is going to give us what? Negative 3. And so it's going to be negative 3 tenths. And then negative 3 plus 5 is going to give us what? 2. In this case, it's going to be 2 tenths. And then 2 plus 5 is going to give us what? It's going to give us, of course, 7. So we are good to go. This is a little bit tricky, but with some practice, I'm pretty confident you guys will master this.